Was wine ever just wine, seriously, before it became a buzzword for organic wellness and Instagrammable cocktails? It was something else entirely. Something messy. Something intimately tied to the most primal, the most scandalous, and frankly, the most bewildering aspects of human experience. Let's ditch the sterile academic language and dive headfirst into a world where a good vintage could mean a good time or a very, very bad one. Imagine a 15th century banquet, not the polite, restrained affairs you picture. Think overflowing tables, the air thick with the scent of roasting meats and, crucially, fermenting grapes. Men, and increasingly women, were obsessed with this dark, heady liquid. It wasn't about quenching thirst, it was about unlocking something deeper. A desire, a longing, a secret shame. Let's start with Ercole Bentivoglio, a Renaissance playwright who, in his play Il Geloso, basically invented the concept of competitive lust. He pitted a lovelorn hero, Fausto, against a drunken fool, Raspo, both vying for the same woman. The dialogue, pure genius. Ah, my Livia, that I might be near to you. Ah, cask of Greek wine, that I might be near to you. That these eyes of mine might look on your beautiful eyes and be gratified by your serene light. That I might drink a draught to my pleasure so I might satisfy this great thirst. It's a simple equation, isn't it? Desire plus wine equals intense yearning, but it didn't stop there. Centuries before, in the 1400s, a medieval author, bless his soul, pondered the same thing. After an affair, and let's be honest, affairs were everywhere, making love was like drinking bad wine. Seriously, he wasn't suggesting a delicate Pinot Noir. He was comparing it to something sour, something unpleasant, something that left a lingering, bitter taste. Then there's Matteo Bandello, a storyteller from the late 15th century, chronicling the scandalous life of Pandora of Milan. He described a lover sucking out the sugared juice of that grape. It's a surprisingly graphic image, a man literally extracting pleasure from a fruit, mirroring the act of love itself, and the consequences. Men transforming into towering elms, while the women became the vines they clung to. It's a bizarre, almost biblical allegory, but it speaks volumes about the perceived power dynamics at play. Now let's talk about Pierre Gringor and his farce, Réel et Ployart. Picture this, a vineyard, a frustrated wife, and a husband obsessed with his vines. My vine spoils for lack of plowing. The solution? A servant, of course. But the underlying message is clear. The desire for intimacy, for connection, was inextricably linked to the act of cultivation, of nurturing, of producing something. And then there's the barrel. Oh, the barrel. It became a recurring motif, a symbol of untapped potential, of forbidden pleasure. George Farquhar, a witty English playwright, had a line that still sends shivers down the spines of romantics. I reserved the maidenhead of it for your welcome to town. Yep, a barrel of wine, specifically untouched, was being offered as a welcome gift, a metaphor for virginity, for untouched desire. It gets even stranger. John Aubrey, a 17th century biographer, recounted a tale of a young apprentice whose master died. The widow, understandably distraught, invited the apprentice into the cellar and asked him to breach the best butt in the cellar for her. His mistress after married him. Breaching a barrel, shattering its seal, wasn't just about accessing the wine, it was about unleashing a hidden passion, about breaking down barriers. Don't think this was just a male preoccupation. The 17th century saw a surge in songs equating a lover's lips with bowls of claret, her breasts with bottles of white wine, her eyes with cups of canary. It's a surprisingly vivid, almost decadent description of desire. But here's the really fascinating thing. This obsession with wine as a metaphor for sex wasn't just a passing fancy. It was deeply rooted in the symbolism of the vine itself. In the 15th century, a writer argued that making love was like drinking bad wine, a painful, unsatisfying experience. Bandello described a lover sucking out the sugared juice of that grape, while Tansillo's poem depicted grape pickers transforming into trees and vines, highlighting the cyclical nature of desire and reproduction. Consider the practice of trellising vines. The men, in a delightfully twisted logic, proclaimed that if the trees didn't hold the vines in their arms, the grapes wouldn't grow. It's a visual representation of the power dynamics at play, the woman as the passive recipient of male desire, the vine dependent on the tree for support. And the wine wasn't just a metaphor, it was a literal tool. Medical practitioners prescribed wine as a cure for everything from barrenness to impotence. Arnold of Villanova recommended Hippocras for women struggling to conceive. John Gerard, the herbalist, championed brandy for men with erectile dysfunction, calling it the water of life. Apparently, a little liquid courage could solve a lot of problems, but it went deeper than just a quick fix. Wine was believed to cause conception. A powdered stag's penis mixed with black pepper and Malmsey wine was a popular remedy for men struggling to produce offspring. And for women, a simple soak in white wine was said to encourage fertility. The belief in wine's regenerative power extended to pregnancy itself. Doctors recommended diluted wine for women suffering from morning sickness, while others prescribed brandy to prevent miscarriage. The idea was that wine, with its inherent vitality, could nourish both mother and child. Now let's talk about the darker side. The more you drank, the more thirsty you became. Sobriety was only achieved by consuming the forbidden draught. Bentivoglio's dialogue perfectly captured this paradox. A lover's yearning intensified with every sip. And the consequences of overindulgence were often dire. The medieval canonist Pierre the Chanter warned that drunkenness led to filthy lusts. Chaucer's wife of Bath lamented that lechers knew, from experience, that a drinking woman had no defense against their advances. The obsession with wine and sex wasn't confined to the elite. Popular ballads and stories were filled with suggestive imagery. Mother Watkins' ale, for example, was a notorious aphrodisiac, leaving women pale and wan after indulging. And the shepherd high on a hill encountering a pretty maid was simply instructed to taste of my bottle before thou dost go. But the connection didn't end with wine. Other drinks became metaphors too. Cock ale brewed with a rooster was believed to restore waning sexual powers. Coffee, ironically, was blamed for causing impotence, leading to a flurry of pamphlets and petitions decrying its effects. The medical community was almost universally in agreement. Alcohol was good for you, in moderation, of course. Doctors prescribed wine for everything from infertility to syphilis, but there were warnings too. Pregnant women were cautioned against drinking too much, lest they bear children with deformities or intellectual disabilities. The story of Lot, the biblical patriarch who indulged in incest after drinking wine, became a recurring motif. It was used to condemn gluttony, to warn against the dangers of excess, and to highlight the destructive potential of unchecked desire. But here's the twist: the interpretation of Lot's story varied. Some used it to simply condemn drunkenness, while others focused on the moral failings of the women involved. The story of Terence, a Roman playwright, offered a more nuanced perspective. He argued that Venus, the goddess of love, and Ceres, the goddess of agriculture, were linked to Bacchus, the god of wine. In other words, wine stimulated desire, but it was also a symbol of fertility and abundance, and the symbolism didn't stop there. Breaching a barrel became a metaphor for sex, and breaching a barrel became a metaphor for sex. In George Farquhar's The Recruiting Officer, a character offered a friend a drink from a maidenhead of wine, a virgin barrel, symbolizing untouched desire. The connection between alcohol and sexuality wasn't just a cultural phenomenon, it was deeply embedded in medical and religious thought. The belief that wine could cure infertility, stimulate desire, and even prevent miscarriage was widespread, but it wasn't always a positive association. The same wine that could bring life could also bring destruction. As Dante's friend Brunetto Latini warned, an abundance of rich meals and an abundance of wine could lead to filthy lusts. So there you have it. A whirlwind tour through the surprisingly complex relationship between wine and sex in Europe. It's a story of desire, of transgression, of fertility, and of the enduring power of a simple drink to unlock the deepest secrets of the human heart. But let's go back to the beginning. Was wine ever just wine?